So good morning, everyone. My name is Miranda Stiers. My pronouns are they, them. I am joining from Nisenan, Miwok, and Medu lands in what is now Sacramento. I'm going to invite my today's facilitator to introduce themselves, Michelle.
Yeah, hi, my name is Michelle. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm calling in from Miwok land today, and I'm one of the communication coordinators at the partnership. And then Megan.
There's a drought.
Oh, was it like?
So we're like, what the state of the weather like?
Oh, Megan, are you here?
Megan might not, I'm not seeing Megan yet.
Yeah, I'm not seeing her in here yet.
Oh, there she is. Got her.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to make sure I admit everybody as well. She's in now.
Hi, everyone.
Okay. Hi, Megan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Tanahashi. I'm a communications coordinator here at the partnership. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. It's great to be with you here today. I am supporting Michelle in sharing a little bit about our expertise from the comms team. So thanks for having me. Also, I'm calling in from Nisenan land today. So I'll pass it over to the prevention team.
And for anybody from the prevention team who would like to introduce themselves, I invite you to join now.
Hi everyone. Oh, my pronouns went away. Well, I am Kimmy Remus, she, her pronouns. I am on Susquehanna, Piscataway, and Nantego land. And I am one of the prevention specialists here at the partnership. Melody, are you on?
I am here. Thank you, Kimmy. So I am Melody Crispoden. I use she, her, Aya pronouns. I am also a prevention specialist with the partnership, and I'm calling in from Tongva land in Los Angeles.
Did it happen last
Thank
time?
you. So I just want to give a couple of housekeeping. If folks need to mute or unmute, if you want to be on video or if you want to turn it off, you just click those down in your lower corner. You want to see who other participants are and send messages, you can absolutely do that. You can also put things in the chat. Look, closed captioning is on, so you should be able to turn that on. And if you wanted to raise your hand, then you can absolutely do that for questions.
It's going. Let's see what happens.
And I want to just also acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory and homelands of over 120 recognized and many non-recognized tribes here in California. We thank these nations for their generosity and keep them in our hearts. And I've put it in the chat. I'll make sure to put it in again. So if you want to see whose lands you are joining from,
No, just let's see the
you can check out the website. You can also text and be able to find out a little bit about the tribes whose lands you're living on. I'm so sorry for the background noise. It's a joy of working from home. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself now.
Right.
And I'm going to hand it on over to Megan and Michelle.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Michelle, and so for some background information, before I came to the partnership, I worked at a couple of local programs as like prevention, outreach, advocate, and as a preventionist and the young person in the office, I was handed the social media. Right, here's the passwords, have fun with it, with no plan. And I'm sure that's what a lot of you are probably going through. And then in addition to working at the partnership, I run a couple of other nonprofit social medias. And I got my degree in visual communication and design. So this is a topic that I'm really excited to present to you about today. And I'll let me share my screen. All right. So today we'll be talking about social media management. And then Megan, would you like to introduce yourself and a little bit about your background?
Sure. So, oh, I don't see myself. But I'll continue regardless. There we go. I came to the partnership after leaving a local program. I was there for a very short time as a communications coordinator. And then the pandemic hit. And so I ended up at the partnership. My background is in visual communications as well. I'm a graphic designer by trade. And also I have a degree in women and gender studies. So this kind of blended my two interests and really fit well in my scope of work, I guess you would say. So that's why I'm here today to share a little bit about that.
Okay, great. So a little overview of what we're going to go. We're going to review kind of what our social media looks like now. And then we're going to think about what we want it to be. And then kind of talks about steps to get there. And then we'll go over, you know, the nitty gritty and like tips and tricks. So, you're muted, Megan.
Thanks. I think the first place to start is, where are you now in your social media? Is it where you want to be? Ask yourself that question. And really taking an evaluation of your social media presence can really be helpful. It doesn't have to be at such a large scale. I know right now the partnership is currently working with a communications consultant to do a more robust and professional audit, but it could be as simple as sitting down and asking yourself some of these following questions. So, yeah, do you want to go to the next slide, Michelle? Oh, okay, never mind, it's not on that slide. So some of the questions include who is in charge of your social media right now? And does it have to be that person, or can you have support? Do you have too many hands in the pot? Figure that out. What do you typically post now? What kind of content is it? Not only what is the type of messaging that it gives off, but also what is the media that is coming through? Is it video, or is it graphics? Is it blog posts and articles, and sharing information that way? Are they educational posts? Are they more promotional? Are they only about your services? Are there truly posts about prevention and preventing violence? Take an audit of that. And then also, again, determine who your audience is. I know that some folks here have separate prevention accounts from their organization's social media. Some people have it blended. But again, are you only reaching out to preventionists, or are you trying to reach out to the folks in your community that you're trying to prevent violence with? Determine who those audiences are you're trying to reach. If someone were to come across your page right now, they just found it on their search or for you page, you know, if they just stumbled across your page, what do you think they would think? And you can even ask folks that are not in your organization to answer some of these questions to, again, get a bigger picture of what the current state of your organization's social media is. Michelle, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
No, the main thing is just, step back every once in a while and just, kind of think, like, put yourself in your audience's shoes. I think that this is probably like one of the main points I want you to take away is just like every once in a while, look at your posts. If you had like only 3 seconds and you were just scrolling on by, would this catch your eye? Would the audience know what your the information that you want them to know? So let's talk about the big picture. And so I kind of want to open this up to a discussion, whether that's through the chat or if you want to come on video. But what is the purpose of social media? And why is your organization on these platforms? It's a big question, I know.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
So my name's Shayna. I'm with an organization called Safe Passage, and we use social media because obviously we have quite a few fundraisers. We also have events where we're providing education and resources and building awareness to the to our community, and then we also want to be a resource for to build a community of victim. We help people overcoming domestic violence. So that's usually what we'll use our social media for.
Yeah, definitely. I think you and like a lot of people, we all have the same idea, right? Outreach, reaching people where they are in a accessible, friendly manner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and educating them about the programs that we offer, definitely. Yeah, connecting with the community, reaching young folks, prevention messaging, making connections, yeah, promoting services, yeah, outreach, awareness, connecting with possible donors. Yes, the necessary thing that I do not like to do. All right, and then who is in your audience? I know we've talked about young folks, yeah, survivors, donors, friends and family of survivors. All right, and then the next question to ask is, what do you want your audience to know? So I'll open that up to anyone who wants to say anything.
More
Yeah,
so
we
that there
exist.
is,
Oh, sorry, go.
no, it's okay. One being, yes, that we exist. Other is that there is help, that they're not on their own with this journey that they're on. And yeah, that's pretty much it that I have.
Yeah, definitely that validation. Yeah, because it's so isolating. Like domestic violence is so isolating, but to have social media, which is so accessible and in your hands, and then see that hundreds of other people have liked it or are commenting that the same thing happened to them, or or even just like following to show that people care about this topic. Yeah, education, providing resources. Okay, so let's take this idea of our audience and what we want them to know, and we'll just set that aside, but keep that in mind. So now I want you to look or think about your personal social media feed. What do you look for, and what catches your eye?
Well, anymore, I feel like everything's all advertising. So I mean, I'm thinking when I'm talking, I'm speaking of Facebook. That's generally what I'm tasked with. And it has to be, something kind of captivating to get me to click on it. And then I think another way is for us to be interacting with people on our social media.
Yeah, absolutely. That, yeah, that captivating, that hook that keeps you in, the shiny new colorful thing, right? Bright colors, memes, something relatable, but like funny. Right. But it is a lot of ads, right? And those are, well, we'll talk about that later, right? But getting constantly bombarded with ads isn't necessarily the most fun thing ever. And that's like not why I go to social media, right? I go for that eye candy. So short captions, right? That's another thing that's like really engaging, and maybe those emojis. The questions that spark curiosity, right? Maybe those BuzzFeedy clickbait listicles, right? 4 signs you might need, whatever, what someone wants you to know about blank, right? And then what kinds of accounts do you follow? Like beyond just like the posts, you run across something new, what makes you want to follow them? Yeah, relatable content, feel part of that community, language that feels authentic. Yeah. Things that are probably inspiring and happy. I try to avoid, kind of depressing stuff on my feed, although those educational ones, with maybe not great news, I still want to be in the know and be educated, right? Clear and accessible language. And then I also think about, a lot of the information about our programs is just stuff people could easily Google. So like, why are they then, going to the bottom of our page and then clicking on Instagram, right? It's probably so that people could kind of get the vibes of your organization, right? Are you in the know and relatable and friendly and welcoming, right? And that's not necessarily something you can get from a website that lists your services. Right, and it gives them a little bit more of the behind the scenes information. Yeah, things that are relatable, humorous, and cute. And then, maybe things that demystify the process of accessing services. Yeah. Oh yeah, what is your organization's personality and public facing presence, right? Because this is, all of that stuff is things that people are picking up within 5 seconds of looking at your page, right? So now we've talked about what we want our social media to be and like the information that we want to give to the audience. And then we've also talked about what is appealing to us as like a general audience. So let's put those two together. So Megan?
Sure. So bringing that all together, what do you want your social media to look like? So here's how we start to formulate a game plan. Sorry if there was a weird echo there. What would the ideal domestic violence social media page look like to you, right? So let's kind of brainstorm here. Is it you know, all of these images that could potentially trigger survivors? Is it full of jargon and statistics? Or does it resonate, like some of you folks have put in the chat? Does it have educational content, but it's also uplifting? We take all of these principles and that we want to see in our own feeds, right? And put it into our work. So just keep in mind, not only what do you and your organization want to see on your social media feed, but how would you, not just you, but taking a step back as an audience member, feel if you had to look at statistics, the same quotes, the same graphics, the same hotline images every time? Would you want to keep following that account? Is there more to the slide, Michelle? Yeah, so things we want to stand out are who you are, right? Again, what is the public persona of your organization? And again, all of the things that we talked about before: welcoming, warm, friendly, inclusive, that inspiration, right? As much as domestic violence is a hard subject to talk about, where's the hope? Where are the stories that will inspire folks? But we're also authentic stories, right? We don't want to exploit anybody. And also the other component of your public facing persona is what you do. You'll see that this is a smaller column and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Folks have already clicked on your page. They have a little bit of a sense of what you do already. You really, again, want to build that personality when it comes to your social media and let who you are as an organization shine versus just what you do. But that's still important because you do provide services, right? And there are educational components to your social media. So it's a balance, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then here's the roadmap. We're building the plan. How do we get to this ideal, utopia of a good balance of social media? So first up, what kind of posts make up this, bubble of content? Educational posts, right? We see this a lot about domestic violence, about services, but also it can be some of these examples. Gaslighting sounds like 3 important points social media isn't talking about. Also, it's taking action, right? What can people do? They don't want to just sit there and be passive, right? If they're coming for inspiration, they're hoping to do something. So do you have something other than sign up to be a volunteer or donate? Do you ever think about uplifting other local community members? Do you ever share other actions from allies in your community? So expanding beyond just what your organization has to offer in terms of action, I think is a good way to get outside and of what people can do to help. Because a lot of the time, folks that are following nonprofit accounts, they want to help and they want to learn, right? And again, inspirational, affirmational things always resonate with folks. They don't go on social media for the most part to be even more overwhelmed with news and very, disheartening statistics and things like that. So the inspiration is always useful. Also, your success stories. What are your wins? What was an awesome thing? They're following you and they want to celebrate you. So celebrate alongside them.
Right. And so Oh,
but no, I'm
these,
gonna ask you.
yeah, and so I think social media is really about thinking about how do you reach your audience and what do you want them to know, right? Because we could have presented a lot of this educational stuff in like, you know, a really standard format, but you know, I always, whenever I create posts, I always think about the audience. What would capture their attention, right? And so something like a listicle, 3 important points that you're not talking about. Oh, what? And then you want to click on it to learn more. And then that also just shows that you're right, an expert in that field and want to share your expertise, right? And you could do a post that just gives the definition of gaslighting, but that isn't necessarily like relatable and maybe interactive. And a big thing is getting a lot of those that interaction, right? And so the affirmational posts, they get a lot of likes, a lot of people commenting. Same with like the gaslighting sounds like so I used to work for my sister's house, which is why a lot of these examples are from my sister's house, because I could see what the statistics were for all of those, right? And a lot of people added their own, what gaslighting sounds like, or, is this gaslighting? I'm not sure, and that kind of got that conversation starting. And then for success stories, right, that's not only like the wins your organization has, because I, see a lot of people post their grants, but also, maybe there's a survivor story you can share. But of course, without making sure that that story is authentic and you're not exploiting that story or anything.
Sure. So this next little tidbit is the 70-20-10 rule. And so this is the ideal breakdown of using some of the content that we just talked about in the previous slide, and how much and how frequent they would appear in your organization's social media. So most of the time, and majority of the content that you share should add some type of value. These are the posts that we talked about before, the educational posts, the inspirational post, the action, right? These are all adding value. 20% other things. I'm sorry, the 70% is really the bulk of your expertise, right? So this is what your audience came to your page for. So that should be a majority of your content. And if you were outlining who your audience would be, then you can know how to answer that question. 20% is other things. So these are the tangential parts: industry news, testimonials and reviews, external resources. And so in terms of like a testimonial or something, it could even be, I know for the partnership, sometimes we'll get quotes from folks who've gone through some of our trainings, right? And the feedback that we've gotten there. Industry news is even just news tied around your local social justice activism going on in your community, the partners in your community that you're connected to, and sharing those types of, it's not quite promotional, because you'll see it's only supposed to be 10% promotional. But it's not quite a promotion, but it's uplifting the work of other folks in your community. And then the 10% promotional, right? We talked about in the beginning, there's that small column of the content that people want to see is more of who you are, not exactly what you do, right? And so we really try to balance it's difficult, right? Because sometimes your organization has a lot of things going on. There's webinars you're promoting, there's trainings you're promoting, there's events you're promoting, but we really try to offset that with things that not just people in our local area can get involved in, but things that will resonate with people across the state, since we're a statewide organization, right? But even people anywhere could see a post about what is gaslighting and have that resonate with them. So nobody, the 10% promotional really equates to don't be that person at the party that won't stop talking about themselves, right? So folks can get tired of that. And again, when we listed in the beginning all the things that you personally like to see in your social media, folks said, I don't want to see ads. So why are you as an organization constantly posting ads about the same event? So that's the 70-20-10 rule.
And yeah, you can see it here, right? So on the left is a post where, we're kind of educating the audience, providing a little bit of value, and that got a ton of engagement, right? 146 or 147 likes, right? And then on the right is something of, no offense, Miranda, for including your quote here, right? But it's, obviously a bit more promotional, like we're asking the audience to do something. It's not necessarily providing a whole lot of value. And so, it only got 38 likes. So yeah, I think a lot of organizations or a lot of board members and bosses, get really stuck on this idea of like, oh, well, if you just constantly keep posting the same event flyer, then it'll get more attention. And that's not necessarily true. And then the other thing the partnership does is, tries to get at the same ask or the same event through different angles. So for example, on the left, we're also asking them to take the same action, which is to reach out to your legislators and ask for prevention funding. Right, but since we do it in a little bit more of a value-based way, it grabs a lot more people's attention, right? And we, yeah, like here you can tell that there's a bit more of like that clickbaity question that really draws people in. Yes, definitely. The timing of the post gets more audience, right? And so that Dep Be Heard post that I showed, that got a ton of attention, right? And, plus we could use a bunch of hashtags that were very trendy at the time. So, one thing that people always talk about is the algorithm of social media, right? And so the way to kind of gain that system is to engage your audience. And so one great way is to get a lot of comments. And so these were a couple of posts that did really well because, people commented a ton because we just straight up asked them questions. And then the challenge, that was something we were trying, I generally take a lot of like, we'll just throw things at the wall, see what sticks. And this was something that stuck, was to do this challenge. And we had a lot of people DMing us weeks later of like, oh, wow, I use that word so much. Or they came back to the post and commented that they realized that they had been using the word just frequently in their conversations. And, like the caption, like later we followed it up with like, this idea of like confidence and people like trying to put themselves up in a ball, right? So we followed it up with some educational stuff. And then another way to engage is just asking people to engage, right? So on the right is leave a heart in the comments. Easy. And people do it, and you'll probably start to notice this a lot more on Instagram pages. And then asking people to share. And actually, I did that a lot with the hotline number and like the chat, share this chat in case to your stories. Sorry, share the website for the chat line to your stories so that, people know that this resource exists. And then going along with what Anna said about the timing of the post, you get a lot of shares if there's like some big domestic violence story in your area, and people start looking for that resource. And the first thing you do is ask them to share. People, and that's an easy action to take. People are going to do it. So I've mentioned this before, but if there is anything I want you to take away from this entire webinar, it's to always ask yourself 2 questions. How do you reach your audience, and what do you want them to know? Right, and that works on the bigger scale. If someone were to look at your page, what do you want them to know in the first 5 seconds that they look at your page, and how do you reach them? Same with each post. How do you reach your audience? Probably with something that hook to draw them in. And then what do you want them to know? You can sneak in the educational part afterwards. Yeah, so we talked about these posts before, that 3 important points social media isn't talking about, that strong hook. 5 questions to ask yourself if you're in a relationship, another hook. All right, so let's get into, so that was like the big picture of generally how to run your page. So let's get into the platforms. Right, how do you reach your audience? Well, Facebook generally has an older audience, which I guess I'm now a part of. Yes, the slides will be available later, as well as the recording that'll be on our website. Right, Instagram, generally like a younger crowd. Twitter, that's where all the politics goes, right? So that's why the partnership posts a lot of our stuff, asking, tweeting at legislators, asking people to go on Twitter to tweet at their legislators for a request. And then TikTok for the Gen Zers. Let's see. And then accounts with the most engaging posts get bumped to the top, right? So if you have very easily likable posts, like who wouldn't like something about boundaries, right? Just like it and move on. But still, that post that gets a ton of likes will be bumped to the top. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about a lot is hashtags, right? And so there's 3 types: location kind of hashtags, community related hashtags, and topic hashtags, right? And so I see a lot of pages struggle with this, which is why I wanted to include it, right? So we think about those 2 questions. How do you reach your audience? Well, if you are hosting a local program for your community, you're probably not going to be reaching your audience if you're tagging domestic violence awareness, because people in your community probably aren't looking at those hashtags, right? Instead, they're looking at ones local to them. So I would tag things, and I'm from Sacramento, right? So hashtag Sacktown, hashtag Women of Sacramento. And then I'll also throw in hashtags that will get a lot of likes. So Sacramento feminists, right? Because I know that they'll take a look and probably like that, which will boost my engagement. And then use hashtags that vary in popularity. So use, of course, it's nice to get the bigger ones, but get those smaller hashtags with maybe only a couple of hundred posts and followers, because it's called laddering. So if your post gets a lot of engagement in that that very small hashtag, then Instagram, Twitter, well, Instagram usually will bump you up to the next level, and you'll get more engagement, and it'll be more featured in the medium one. And if it does really well there, they'll bump you up to the higher one. And your posts will have a little bit more longevity since there's only a couple of posts in those hashtags. By the way, any questions? We've been doing a lot of talking.
I have one, Michelle.
Mhm.
How do you discover those smaller hashtags, I guess? Because I can always see what's trending, but I don't know
Mhm.
how to find like those more niche ones to do the system that you're talking about.
Yeah, I just think about the very specific community, location, or topic that I'm talking about. So if I were to advertise we had this big like fundraiser at my local program where we would do a lot of it was a book reading from usually like a survivor, or the book had to do with like Asian survivors, right? So then I would think about, okay, what community am I trying to access? So probably Sacramento Asians, right? So Asians of Sacramento, and you would just kind of think of it, and then as it appears, as you like type it in, you can kind of see how Instagram will autofill it, and then you can see how many followers there are, right? And then you can do related ones. So Asian food in Sacramento, right? Stick it up there. And then maybe each of the communities, Southeast Asians in Sacramento, things like that.
There's also hashtag generators. You can just Google one and then put in a tag you would want to use, and it will bring up some ones that are tangential. I like to take a step further though, and that will be a starting point for me. And then I'll go ahead and click some of those hashtags, look for posts that are related, and then look at the hashtags they're using. And then, take a couple that I like, and then kind of play almost like a game of telephone, right? Click the next post that I think is related to the post that I'm trying to put out, and is similar. What hashtags are they using that I'm not using yet? Also, I wanted to bring up in the chat, there's a little bit of back and forth while this is going on. Somebody asked, do hashtags not bother users when reading the captions? And actually, a tip that I had learned is to put your hashtags in the first comment. So currently that's actually what the algorithm is favoring, and it will actually devalue posts that have lots of hashtags in the actual caption. So stick to 1 to 2 main hashtags in the caption, and then go ahead and comment the rest of your hashtags. Oh, see, we have a question about having a large digital divide. How can we best reach out to the communities? So actually, I want to throw this question over to prevention team, who are a little more experts at building community. You can always build community online, but again, if there is barriers to access there, that's not always easy, right? So prevention team, do you have any thoughts on, building a community?
Yeah, some of the things that I would look at is what is the community identifying as their needs, rather than sometimes we can get stuck in like what we think the needs are for the community. What are the areas in which community folks are gathering, and identifying who some of the leaders are in the community, and starting to build those relationships with those individuals and organizations. And really being mindful, like it starts with one person introducing, but trying to institutionalize. So like if I'm in an organization and I'm going out and building a relationship with someone else at an organization, I want to make sure that that is going to sustain beyond if that person leaves. So then looking at, again, kind of institutionalizing where it's having a relationship with the organization and vice versa. And also looking at what are the events that your community are holding and showing up for those. They don't have to be like info tables can be seen as a time suck sometimes, but also that can be a good space to go out and start meeting folks, and like taking time to go around and meet people at the other areas who are hosting other tables, and looking at the faith-based events that are happening, and is that something that is going to be safe and feasible for you to go into, and to be able to be there and representing the work that you're doing, to again start building some of those relationships and building figuring out like how to have those conversations, because there is that, it's sometimes referred to as code switching of how you're changing up how you're having the conversation. So like I can start going into the socio-ecological model and the tertiary, primary, and secondary, and like all of these things, but making sure that you're not going into the jargon. What's the terminology that your community is using? Those are some of the things I would think of, and if anybody else on the prevention team has ideas.
Oh, well, I was gonna say that, think about what is reaching you, right? Or how you could have reached someone like you or your family members. I think about that a lot. And then as well as who are the leaders, the influencers in your community, right? Whether that's religious leaders or informal other leaders, teachers, politicians, and then trying to build those relationships, right? But you can't just like reach out to, I don't know, the president first and expect them to respond. You have to think about what's kind of local in your community and who's kind of feasible within your reach, and then you can kind of expand from there, especially if we're talking about social media. In Sacramento, we found a couple of local Sacramento Asian influencers, especially like this one Asian mom influencer. And initially we asked her to kind of share some resources, and now she's become a big advocate promoter for our organization.
Go use the restroom. No more. No, thank you.
And then Megan, Nicole has a question.
I was actually just typing an answer, but yeah.
Okay.
I think this goes back to Michelle's point of laddering. You want a mix of the broader hashtags, the hashtag domestic violence, right? The hashtag that is large, but you also want the niche one, right? So hashtag Sacramento resources, right? And again, if you're performing well in that smaller hashtag, you're going to start to perform well in the next hashtag that's a little bit larger than that, but not quite like the humongous one. And then finally, if you're doing well on that hashtag, then you'll hopefully perform well in the big, broad hashtag domestic violence, right? And again, I think Anna put in the chat that some folks are following those broader hashtags, right? And so if you follow hashtag, a post, even if you're not following that account, will pop up into your feed. So make sure it's a mix.
Right, and then you kind of know who your allies are for hashtags, right? So like domestic violence awareness, and I know that probably the majority of people following those are advocates and or other DV programs who are just going to be like, yeah, let me like you so that you get better engagement. So that's also kind of nice.
Did somebody else have a question? Like, did they come off mute? Nope. Okay. So we'll move on to messaging really briefly. I think there's a couple folks in this room who actually just finished the training that Jess and I put on about working with the media. So this might be familiar with you. So good messaging is consistent, audience focused, brief, and ear ready. So consistent, you want a message that is memorable. Think of like the commercials that always stick in your brain, right? There's, funnily enough, a lot from insurance companies, right? Like Flo from Progressive. Jake from State Farm, right? They all appear, they're a mainstay in that campaign. So there's something familiar that the audience is familiar with throughout each of those. And it consistently shows up. That doesn't mean it's the same thing every time, right? We talked about not posting the same event flyer every time, but there's a familiar element. Something that I have been saying a lot when it comes to promoting our prevention budget ask is to break generational cycles, we need generational funding. And I have that message, not the same, paragraph of messaging that I've crafted every time, right? But I have that snippet throughout various posts related to our prevention budget ask. So it's consistent, it's familiar, but it's not the same. There's a difference. Audience focus. So effective media messages incorporate your audience's needs and values that resonate deeply, right? We talked about knowing your audience and then knowing what you like as an audience. So again, going back to relatable, inspirational, all the things that you would like to see and all the things that your audience members would like to see. Brief. So I know we can often get caught up in having really long explanations and captions, especially on Instagram and Facebook. But especially for things like Twitter, right? You have very limited characters. For TikTok, you only have a couple of minutes. So where can you pare down? And often I like to start with the long version and then edit down. Where can I edit? And especially as I'm editing down for something like Twitter, which has a limited amount of characters, I see where I can also remove some of those things in the longer form post that's going to go on Instagram, Facebook, etc. Right? I think I put it also in the chat that the average attention span on social media is 8 seconds. So if you haven't caught somebody's attention span in 8 seconds, they're scrolling on to the next thing, right? And then I don't know about you, but how often do you open a caption? And then when you do open a caption and it's 3 paragraphs long, are you really going to read it? I know at the end of the day, especially because social media is such a big part of my job, it's the last thing I want to do is read paragraphs and paragraphs. So keep that in mind. And then finally, ear ready. So we talked about this before. Ear ready is a little more geared toward if you're doing an in-person interview, but this could also apply to video messages. And again, it's that catchy little phrase, right? Like I talked about before, I have that little phrase that to break generational cycles of violence, we need generational funding. So it's a little bit of an earworm, right? So even though you're not saying it out loud, it can even, as long as it's constantly kind of appearing in your different social media posts, some version of it, that is ideal, right? And then also, again, we talked about not using jargon, using short words and sentences, using very plain language. I think there's a statistic that most people like it to keep it around a 5th to 6th grade reading level, mostly because it's more enjoyable, right? It's not that people can't comprehend, it's that social media is, I mean, there are some folks who want to be mentally stimulated, but I think for the most part, people come to social media to be entertained, right? So keep that in mind. Make it very easy for your audience. And so the next slide is talking about the messenger. So there's a phrase that the comms team uses very often, and we like to say we like to pass the mic. We know that we are not always the most authentic person to speak to a particular topic, and we really keep in mind that the messenger matters as much as the message. So I can sit here and tell you, right, that we need to break generational cycles of violence with generational funding. But as a communications person, does it make sense that I'm saying that message to an audience of legislators, let's say, or does it make a lot more sense coming from our public policy director, right? So this is where I would be in position, and it's we're getting a little off topic of social media, but then I would be in a position of writing talking points, right? And giving that to the person that's best equipped to take on speaking to that audience. So, but it also applies to our social media here. So there is no such thing as a one size fits all messenger. We know oftentimes that executive directors are called upon or in a position where they're the face of an organization, right? But is that always the best person? Do you always want to speak to, or do you always want to hear a story from somebody who is at this high level, or do you want to hear a story from the people that are working firsthand with survivors, right? I know not only as an audience, well, as an audience member, journalists often will use that perspective when they're trying to reach their audiences. Sorry, that's a little bit backwards. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is journalists will want to speak to the people that are closest to the story, right? They don't want the person that knows who says that they saw, that she saw, that they said, right? They want the person closest to the story who has the most direct experience, and they know that's what their audience wants to see. So same thing here with social media. You should know as you're creating your social media that the audience wants to see the most authentic person. Also,
Yeah. Oh, and then I just want,
Go ahead.
oh, sorry. Oh, I just wanted to say that, you know, some of our most liked posts are ones where we've asked other people to do reels for us. And so, you know, we had one of the members of our teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month advisory council create a reel, right? And she knew what appealed to her audience. And I think a lot of people saw her as an authentic messenger to be talking about teen dating violence, of course. And so that's one of our most liked posts, as well as some of the other videos that we've gotten from other survivors. Megan.
Yeah, and I have we have an example also a little bit later in the deck, but to finish off these last couple of bullet points, how someone says something sometimes matters more than what they say. This, when it comes to videos, can come down to body language and the tone that you're taking on. For captions, it could be the word choice that you use. For your graphics, are you establishing visual credibility? Does this look professional, and does it feel like part of your organization's brand? Does it feel authentic? Really is kind of the main point of all of these things. And finally, building relationships offline and amplifying your partners. So again, when we pass the mic, we don't always pass the mic to folks on our team. We go outside our organization too. Sometimes there is something that is at an intersection of DV that we're not an expert of. And so we go ahead and do outreach to those communities. So here's a couple examples of how we pass the mic. So our first case study is with Black Women's Revolt. This is how we build relationships. Our first, we first got wind of a domestic violence tragedy that ended up taking the life of a very small infant. I think it was an infant, or at least a toddler, a very young child. And so as a statewide coalition, we weren't super involved, right, with the day-to-day, the hurt in the community. And so the first step we took was to outreach to an organization that is already in that community and close to that community and had put something out. We asked to amplify their voices, and they went ahead and said, yes, go ahead, repost. And so we posted this, and because it came from an authentic messenger, it got a good amount of engagement. But also it built a relationship. Actually, from there, we kept building bridges, and this organization is now a member of the partnership coalition, and then also attends I got them connected to our capacity building team to attend the regional meetings. So our next example is on, oh, I guess that slide didn't make it in. No worries, but I did have a slide that was a case study on effective collaboration. Michelle had hinted at it before, and we have done a few different campaigns where we have asked folks, again, who are the most authentic messengers that we know of, right, to participate and send us a video. We have this tool called Video Ask, and there is a nonprofit discount if you are interested. And what it is a I guess a video collection tool. And so you set up a link, you send it out to whoever you want to gather the video from. They can click the link and then start recording right away. It also has a space for them to put their notes so that they can read the notes while they're looking at their camera. And then it goes ahead, and when they're done, uploads that to a cloud automatically for us. So it's very easy for us to retrieve, and then we don't have to do that back and forth of like, oh, I uploaded it to Dropbox for you. Oh, okay, it's like too big, and finding some kind of resource like that. Oh, thanks, Michelle. Also, I know that prevention funding is very slim, but we do try to budget ahead of time to pay contributors for their work. Even if you can get just one contributor and budget for that, I think that's helpful. If it's even if you could get gift cards donated or something like that that you can use to thank the folks for, you know, telling their stories and being a part of your campaign, I think that's helpful. And then also have a rapport throughout the year, not just when you need something. So you'll actually see that all of these folks are from our last year's DVAM campaign. We asked them to talk about intersections of domestic violence and other topics that they were experts in. And so at the bottom, second to the right, there is Ben Salem, who is also was previously part of our Teen Dating Violence Awareness Prevention Month campaign. There we go. And so because we kept in contact, we had a good relationship. He came back for DVAM and made us another video.
Okay, so next I wanted to talk about time-saving tips, right? Because I mean, yeah, sure, this is nice to have, this great social media, but I don't have time for that. So my top one would be to use content that's already created, right? So, you've probably like I also had to do the newsletters. So I would just copy and paste stuff from the news letter that I had already written. Or for the partnership, we have a lot of webinars. I can copy and paste a lot of the descriptions into our social media from the webinars. And then, part of using content is to possibly repost content from trusted sources. And when you reuse content, it's necessary to repeat things, as Megan said, but, switch it up a little bit so it's not the exact same thing. But, the main chunk of thinking about what points you have to make is already done for you. On the topic of use content that's already created, ask other preventionists if you can use their content if you see good content. Hey, can I repost that? Can I take that for myself? The beauty of us all being kind of individual local programs is that someone who's if someone creates a great post in Fresno, then someone in San Jose probably isn't also following that domestic violence organization, and but could also use that same information in that same post, right? So with these two posts, this post about boundaries, you could see I credited them. I took that from Impact Boston, and I asked them. And then this prevention one at the bottom, I took that from a prevention account. I can't remember the name right now. But I just asked him, hey, I really like that post. Can I kind of use that same content? And then also remember to credit the original artist or the original posters. Be intentional about who's involved. I think social media suffers a lot from having too many cooks in the kitchen because everyone thinks that all the information is important, or maybe doesn't understand this concept of keeping things short, right? And so if you have too many cooks, suddenly your caption, or your short, snappy thing is now 5 times longer than you wanted. Right, and that also means that possibly the approval process is longer than you need, especially if it's something that is kind of timely. So, don't bypass approval stuff, but be intentional. Right, and part of being intentional is anticipating the news. Before you even start writing out these posts, maybe share the framing and the kind of messaging that you want to put forward. So for the Depp v. Heard posts, we knew that decision was coming down soon, and that we would likely have to respond. So beforehand, we shared with the staff, the kind of messaging we want to put out is what people aren't talking about. Our goal isn't to take sides with a post. So that kind of made the approval process much faster. Yeah, get buy-in ahead of time and build that trust. Yes. And then I used to work for an organization, where I'd have to get every post approved. And so what worked was to get bulk approvals. And then this was actually really helpful because I had a lot of volunteers or some volunteers. And so I would have them make a bunch of posts. And the educational, not timely posts, that added a lot of value. And just get a bunch of them approved ahead of time. Same with like service flyers. And then you just have a whole library of stuff you can choose from. And having a calendar. So, one purpose is so that after you get those bulk approvals, you can just schedule out the next month efficiently. And then the other is so that people can trust in your expertise, right? That 70-20-10 rule that we talked about, providing value. It really builds that trust that, okay, this person is working on building a consistent audience instead of just putting out a bunch of event flyers, right? And that saved me a bunch of time because I'd get board members going like, why haven't you posted the fundraiser flyer for the 15th time this week? I can instead say, hey, look at the calendar, trust the process. I'm, building up the engagement on the page. And that's why I'm not posting the flyer. And also it will be posted, 2 days from now, if you look at the flyer, or if you look at the calendar. So that was helpful. Yeah. Does anyone else have any time saving tips?
I know I like to write my alt text while I'm crafting a post so that I don't have to sit there and type it in. As I'm posting it, I have it already ready to go. And so once I get that approval, I'm like, okay, caption, image, copy and paste the alt text. And then I have it also in a document so that I can make sure that it's easy to copy and paste to all the other platforms when I'm posting.
Using the Facebook Creator Studio is really helpful, right? Because then you can just post to multiple platforms at one time. And you can also do this from the share in Instagram. That way you get multiple platforms at once. So let's move on to some do's. So one do is that I try to switch up the terms I use, right? So this is me again thinking of my audience, right? Domestic violence might not be a term that resonates with everyone. A lot of people don't know what it means, right? Or it has the stigma, right? Violence, kind of scary. Domestic, does that imply that I have to be married to the person, right? And so I'll switch it up. Dating violence, unhealthy relationships, relationships with abuse, toxic relationships, or, just spell it out. When your partner doesn't treat you well, or if you feel like you're walking on eggshells around your partner a lot. Educate your audience. Don't just cite problems, right? So like the statistics, they aren't very engaging. And then it's very passive education, and it could be unrelatable, right? To tell me that there's this many hundreds of thousands of people that are affected, that really doesn't want me to follow your account or engage me, yeah, and it's not particularly relatable. yeah, look into monthly awareness to talk about specific topics. Exactly, Anna. And then, you know, another thing to make it authentic is to make sure that you aren't only talking about LGBTQ stuff in June, you know, also talk about it throughout other months of the year. So you're not just like hopping on that trend. You're stable. You always help LGBTQ survivors, not just during June. Use simple words and sentences, short paragraphs, emojis, you know, especially if you have like multiple bullet points, having those emojis. Let's see, look through your content with multiple lenses. Right, so if you were to post something like be courageous and strong, you know, to some people that's you know, very empowering, but if you look at it through another lens, it could be seen as, you know, try harder and endure more abuse. So, you know, make sure you think of your content in multiple ways. Use people who cause harm instead of abusers. You know, it makes it kind of dismantles this idea of like the monster abuser myth. And then let's see, be inclusive. So avoid using heterosexual examples, or, you know, ones that assume that the woman in the relationship is the victim and the man is the person who caused harm. And then, of course, safety first. Right, so, you know, make sure you're not getting survivors' faces in. Check if you're posting from the shelter or like some other place that's supposed to be private and confidential. You know, make sure, check the backgrounds, delete your EXIF data. And then, yeah, use different languages to capture a wider audience. Definitely. Yeah, we did this a lot with my sister's house, right? Because we had a lot of Asian folks. And so we would engage different communities with the different languages. And so that was always fun to see kind of like which community got theirs spread the most. And then let's see, are there any platforms and programs to help create social media content while using a desktop? Yeah, definitely Canva. And then be sure to look into their nonprofit program, because then you get Canva Pro for free. And that'll help you create graphics. With emojis. There are programs that have emojis. For one, like Zoom has emojis. So typically what I do is I find it on there, you know, or some other program with emojis, and then like copy and paste it into my caption.
Or I'll just Google whatever emoji, and then you can just copy and paste it. I do everything on the desktop. I almost never do anything on my phone unless it's like posting to a story or something like that. Even if you're using the Creator Studio from what are they called now? Meta. And since it has both Facebook and Instagram, it has an emoji inserter, I guess you would say, an emoji tool. If you want to share, that really fast, Michelle, or I could pull it up. Do you want me to like share it on my screen?
Yeah, can you share it on your screen?
Yeah, let me see. Okay, I think you have to stop first. Okay. Okay, so I have Creator Studio here. It comes with your Facebook business page. And you'll see at the top, it has Facebook and Instagram. I go here and create post. And then click the account I want. There's like literally a thing that says insert an emoji. And that's just what I use to insert an emoji into a caption.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, can you also show that you can like publish to multiple platforms from this one thing?
Sure. Yeah. So for example, down here, it says post to Facebook. So all I have to do is check. Okay, well, it's not gonna let me check it because I don't have any content, but you can check this box and it will post on both Instagram and Facebook. And then for Twitter, same thing. There's a
What was that website called?
Creator Studio.
Thank you.
And same thing for Twitter. I just go directly to twitter.com. It has insert emoji here, and then you can search your emoji. Yeah, it's much easier, I think, to manage social media from a desktop. So if you have any more questions about doing that, I literally do everything on my desktop.
Yeah, so Hootsuite is great. That was the other one I was going to suggest. They have a bunch of other ones like that. And so Creator Studio isn't necessarily better. It's just like the official way and just how the partnership does it. But any of those are just great at saving time and cross-posting. Oh, Greatly Social. Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. Okay. So let me share my screen again. So I want to talk about some of the don'ts. Don't use extreme examples of domestic violence, sexual assault, or human trafficking to illustrate how bad the problem is. It's often like alienating survivors, who feel like their experience might not be as bad, right? And
Who,
that
Michelle?
might,
Oh,
and then that might prevent them from reaching out or identifying with your page. And then, of course, no jargon, right? No DV, SA, IPV, spell it out, change up your terms. Yeah, use simple terms, so don't use complicated words. And then this was popular a couple years ago to use a lot of cursive, and they really don't teach cursive to a lot of young people these days. And, it's hard to read for those with limited English proficiency. And then avoid using guilt-inducing stuff. You should be doing this. Other thing to avoid is this savior complex that is common in the nonprofit industry. Oh, we're saving all these survivors. Yeah, don't use that. And then pleading. Yeah, instead of like pleading and like begging your audience to do something, instead build solidarity, why you should care about this issue, together to build that solidarity. And then this is a pet peeve of mine, but when you're naming barriers, name the barrier and not the cause of the barrier, right? So race isn't the problem. Discrimination, white supremacy, those are the problems. Okay. So I kind of wanted to open it up right now for discussion. And ask y'all, what has worked for you? What advice can you give to others who are also running their social media accounts? Anyone? What kind of posts have gotten a lot of engagement and reach?
I think very simple language like say some Huffington Post kind of human interest stories, which is not very heavy, but which picks your interest on, hey, or curiosity on the story itself. So something that has a quote as a headline, people tend to click on those. That's what I have noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. Human interest quotes, right, to show that it's a authentic messenger, and and usually those human interest stories are also asking questions, or saying something that other people can relate to. Definitely. Yeah, think and study of when your audience will be online so you can post and receive more engagement. For sure. Yeah, they have that in the analytics of your account, so you can see when most of your audience is online. Right, at a local program, I posted a lot at night, and at lunchtime, because that's when people would be on their phones. But for the partnership, since we're largely reaching out to a lot of member organizations, they're working between 9 to 5, so posting at like 6 p.m. doesn't get a lot of engagement. Yeah, if you work with young people, ask them to pick a topic and create their own that the organization can share. Yeah, they know what appeals to them and what will appeal to their peers. Right, and maybe they have questions and that you have the expertise around, and other people likely share those same questions and curiosity. Anyone else? All right. Well, the next thing is the comms team kind of wanted to take this opportunity to ask you all what would be helpful. Our goal is to support you all as you do your work. So what would be helpful from the comms team?
Thank you.
I heard a lot of people ask for these slides, so we'll definitely send out this recording as well as the slides to y'all.
Looks like we have a question from Adriana. How do we establish guidelines if more than one person will be sharing on social media? Honestly, we work as a team together and also our policy team sometimes does some stuff on Twitter for us. They're way more knowledgeable about policy than we'll ever be. So their wording is often better. Anyhow, in terms of visual kind of branding, there's ways you can set up templates in Canva. So everybody's using the same couple of templates. You can add your brand colors in there. So everybody, uses those. Also determining what fonts, so you can stay consistent. And then also just just meeting with each other and talking it out. The comms team has a standing meeting every week to discuss the week ahead, what our strategy is going to be, not only what is going to be posted, but a little bit of the framing ahead of time too. Just getting together and talking it through. If you have even just half an hour to do that, can be really helpful.
And then I think to establish guidelines, you kind of have to have an initial sit down meeting. All right, here are our shared goals. And then from there, you know, you can, with each post, ask like, okay, do each of these posts meet that goal and, you know, these common values and whatever we're going to share, right? And gather all those kind of stakeholders and all the people who would be in the social media. That way you have this shared understanding of what should be on your account. Yeah, and then Megan, Jess, and I, the comms team, we have like an open chat where we're constantly asking, you know, like, oh, okay, is this okay? And getting approval from each other. But I understand that might not be possible for a lot of situations.
Yeah, so it really, you know, depends how much support you can get, but if you can get buy-in and trust with each other, that's also really helpful. And again, kind of getting all on the same page ahead of time, so you're all working from the same starting point. We have another question in the chat from Steve Bonet. Is there a communications media listserv we could reach out to in case we have any questions or want to bounce around some ideas? There currently is not. You can always reach out to anybody on the comms team. Our email inboxes are open. There is, we're hoping in the works to be determined soon to see if we can get some sort of community practice or something like that for comms folks together, but currently no.
Yeah, that's my dream, like what I would love to establish, because yeah, when I worked in a local program, it was like, yeah, I just wanted someone to bounce ideas off of. So yeah, we provide technical assistance. So, you know, if you want to request a meeting, I love bouncing off ideas with people. And, you know, and then we can answer a lot of those questions.
Yeah, so we don't currently have a broader community, but we do a little more individualized. And actually, sometimes we even meet with folks from other coalitions to bounce off ideas. How is it working in your community? What's going on? We've done that a couple of times. I worked with comms folks at the New Jersey coalition, just met with them and talked it through. When Valor had a comms person, we were regularly meeting like every once in a while just to talk comms. So make some connections in this room too, if you want to, you know, just have like a coffee call or something like that. That would be my advice.
Okay, so we have a question about doing PSAs. Whenever I start a project, I ask myself those two questions, right? How do I reach my audience, you know, and the audience you want, and what do you want them to know? You know, and as well as the goals, right? So if your goal is to get more people to call into your hotline, access more services, okay, what kind, you know, then you know that your PSA has to be very welcoming, friendly, maybe you know, very affirming, you're not alone kind of stuff. And so, you know, maybe that'll help direct you towards some ideas, right? If your PSA is about bystander intervention, right? You think about the kinds of audience that you want them to reach, you know, what do you want them to know? You know, oh, it's easy, accessible, like anyone can do it. And then, you know, your goals. Do you want just awareness of bystander intervention or like the how-tos? I hope that answers your question. Yeah, I had to create a PSA and I agonized over that for like months.
All right, I know we're a little over on time, so just want to thank folks for stopping in. If there's no more questions, we do have one small little thing to share. I'll hand it over to Michelle for that.
Yeah, so we are starting to plan for our Domestic Violence Awareness Month campaign. And so we want to make sure that it's something that's useful for you. And yeah, that will be helpful and that we're providing the right tools. So in the comments below, or actually, shortly after this meeting, we will send out a survey and please fill it out and help us inform our upcoming domestic violence awareness campaigns that we know, how we can best help you and make yours better. And then feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or want to bounce ideas off of us. Request that technical assistance. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited that I got to share all this knowledge with you because I've had all of this brewing in my mind for years. So I'm so excited. Thank you.